So, the Silver Palace beta is here, and I thought, you know what? I don't usually do this. Let's do an initial first impressions. We might conclude the beta with an additional, more in-depth first impressions, or a first impression as we've got further into the game and got a little bit more idea of some of the more complex and, you know, systems that are a little bit further into the actual game itself after the beta. But I wanted to do an initial first impressions, and the main reason for that was because this is a beta that's actually made me a little bit more excited than I was prior to the beta, and that's usually the other way round for the most part. You play a beta and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not as excited as I was. But it's kind of the other way round now. I, like many others, when we first saw Silver Palace, was like, wow, okay, this looks actually kind of insane. And then we saw more gameplay and more combat, and I was like, I don't know, I'm a little bit, I hope this isn't just like more rotation-based gameplay that's going to be very samey to a lot of other games that look like they're doing a similar thing. And I've been pleasantly surprised by quite a few things within the beta as well, which I thought we'd go over today as a little initial first impression. So we'll cover like the premise, the introduction to the game, the MC, the characters, the voice acting and the sound, you know, all that sort of stuff. And we'll talk about the exploration in the game as well, and we'll talk about the combat. We'll go over those three things there, and with the combat we'll talk about like the systems revolving around the combat, because still need to figure out more about that, and hopefully we will go in deeper into the game itself. It's got the typical gacha systems in leveling up your characters and all that sort of stuff, so you won't be surprised by those sort of things. XP farming to get yourself to level your characters up, and then breakthroughs for each subsequent level tier to level up. We've got what seems like a weapon system. It's more like the light cone. That's kind of what it reminds me of from Honkai Star Rail. And we've got a sort of gear system in the game, which I'll go into in the combat section, because it's different. It's definitely different, and I find quite interesting. But initially, the game, you start off and we've got an MC. We have an actual main character that's a character. They're not a dementia-ridden MC that's just there to be a self-insert. We've got a character that's a real person that has a past, that knows why they're here and knows what they're doing and has their memories from prior. It's so nice to not have an amnesia-based introduction into a game of this blank slate. Insert yourself and go from there. And the interactions off the bat with the characters you come into, the interactions feel really natural. The introductions to the characters feel really natural as well, because we are this detective returning back to the city after a while away. I won't exactly say why. It's right at the start, but you can figure that out for yourselves whenever you play or you watch actual people playing the game. And it feels really good. You know, we've got a character who seems interesting, and the detective system in the game is such a breath of fresh air in the gacha space. All I ask from the devs now, from me to the devs, is please lean into this. Go really deep, and don't be afraid to keep it as a core part of the game throughout the entirety of the game, because it's got so much potential. I haven't seen what it has to offer in its entirety so far. I like what I'm seeing. It doesn't seem like there's crazy depth to it just yet, but I'm hoping there will be. And if not, in this beta, please get it added. You get to do some crime scene investigation work. You get to investigate people when you're out and about around the world, kind of a little bit like Watch Dogs, but using your detective skills, tracking people, that sort of stuff. I really like it, and I really hope they lean into that. You get clues together for cases and stuff as well, and I really hope they add some potential opportunities to maybe go awry in your investigation work and have to go about it a different way. Maybe I'm asking too much for a live service gacha game, but I really, really hope they lean into that, and I think it's a really cool system that they've got in the game. As I say, main character seems interesting. She's actually got a character. She speaks quite often in the game as well, and she's gorgeous. I went with the female, of course, and you're introduced into the game, straight into a fight, basically. You're fighting Cinderella, and at first, it feels awkward with the combat, and we're going to go into that because there's definitely some problems with this beta, right? Because I'm optimistic doesn't mean this game is ready. it's far from it. It's far from it. And a lot of it comes down to polish. Across most of the things that I'm going to be saying negative things here, kind of comes down to polish. And I think we need a good, in my opinion, 8 to 12 months to really get things right for this game to come out. So I guess we'll talk about sound. Music, beautiful. The sounding when it's working sounds great. There's missing lines. I don't know if it's bugs or just missing voice lines. And some audio's just not there. It's a closed beta, so I don't hold that against the game. I'm expecting that. I honestly don't mind that. But overall, it sounds decent, right? The characters look gorgeous. I really like the look of the characters. As I say, the MC is beautiful. The characters we've been introduced to so far. Lauren, I love his design as well. He reminds me of like a Valkyria Chronicles kind of character. I just imagine him being a tank commander. He looks great. We've been introduced to Alf. She's cute. Our introduction to her is like really cute. She's a fun character. And then we've got Argos as well, who's a character who's a bartender. We haven't had so much of an interaction with him, a little one, but like he's introduced into your team as well. And just your interactions with the other characters, your assistant, your Watson to your Sherlock Holmes, Ashley, is really interesting as well. And the girl in the dress, well, the woman in the dress, oh my god, days. And you can inspect characters as well and just enjoy the models in all the glory. It looks really cool. And you can get into combat when you're out and about by inspecting enemies because you get an indicator to say, ooh, there's a dodgy person afoot. And then as you get closer, you can start to inspect people and then be like, oh, that's a bad guy, shoot them and initiate combat kind of thing, which then despawns everybody and you kind of fight like in a little area. It's not instance, but it basically puts up a barrier that you can't exit out of. I don't know if you can actually like flee from that. I'm not too sure, to be fair. Feels good. I like all that sort of stuff, right? We will talk about the combat in a second because I've definitely got some negatives around the combat. But I guess let's talk about the exploration as well next, because for me, I think the exploration is potentially one of the biggest positives with this game. It's really, really good. It's the polar opposite to something like 3.0 in Wuthering Waves. You might like that, and I've had my issues with it. People know, if you've watched my videos, I had issues with it, and the reason being is because the map is wholly designed around the utility, and I think it affects the map negatively, personally. Now, this is a map that isn't. The utility is designed around the map, and I really, really like this. We've got a dense urban environment that feels fun to traverse in multiple ways, on foot, on the mount, or through the actual static utility that's around the map. So, you've got a lot less freedom in terms of something like Wuthering Waves. You're not wall running up walls here. You're not doing crazy jumping. Well, actually, we'll get into that in a minute, because there is no jump, but I want to touch on that. It's an odd one, but I want to touch on it. There's no wall running. There's no gliding. You have a mount, which you can, at the moment, at the start, run around and drift around corners on the mount. You actually can't take off from the ground with the mount. You either have to jump off a roof when you're up on a roof to fly, or find one of the air geysers around and hit one of those, and it launches you up into the air, and then you can fly with the mount from there. I'm not too sure with some of the upgrades if you will be able to take off from the ground with the mount. You can let me know down below, people who've got a little bit further. I actually quite like that restriction. Again, it makes everything feel a little bit more deliberate, and it makes you want to explore and gives you a need to explore as well. The static utility in the map as well, in areas where you can grapple to. You can't just grapple whenever you want. There's areas that are like little purple areas. They'll indicate you can grapple to them when you get close enough, and then you can grapple up and you can climb up and traverse and platform your way up onto rooftops and to different areas of the map, because there is a lot of verticality. And there's also these like little jellyfish things around the map, and when you go up to them and interact with them, you get launched up onto the roof like your Mary Poppins, and it takes you up, and it's cool. I actually like that. And also, with some of the grappling areas, there's like railings, kind of like BioShock Infinite, that you can traverse around in between buildings and up on top of buildings and stuff. That's really good also as well. And with the mount, there is kind of like how there is in Renacita, you know, the rings to travel through with the airflow to take you along and travel along those. Really janky though. But the flight in general has issues, especially when you're landing and getting into areas and interacting with stuff, and sometimes just trying to stop the horse in general. Super giga jank. But that's a lot of this game, actually. There's quite a lot of jank. But let's talk about where potentially the actual exploration can fall short here. There's no jump. Now, for me, it's weird. When I first started, I was like, an open world without a jump. What the hell is this? This doesn't make sense. But I'm at the point now where I'm like, you know, if they don't add a jump, I don't mind. If they add a jump, I don't mind. I think it'll work either way, because the way the map's designed in the exploration, it genuinely, honestly doesn't need a jump. It doesn't, but it wouldn't be worse off for getting a jump, if that makes sense. So another part of the exploration that could potentially become frustrating and problematic in the future is it's got a mantle. It doesn't have a jump, but it has a mantle. You can mantle over fences and railings and stuff like that, and mantle on things that are not too high for you to basically to your character, right? But it's incredibly sensitive. So take into a game that has a bit more grounded exploration. So let's say to get to a certain walkway or a rooftop, you've had to go round a building, you've had to grapple up onto some things and platform your way around to get onto the roof, and then you go to cross a railing. And because it's got the floaty Unreal Engine movement sometimes, you might accidentally end up mantling over the edge of a railing and be back down to the street level and have to go around doing that again. It's that kind of frustration of old platformers because the controls were just a little bit jank, and it's got that sort of Unreal jank in terms of the floaty movement, which I hope they tighten up there. And I think that could potentially be fixed by making the mantle a little bit less sensitive, maybe having an actual input for the mantle, or just making it so, as somebody suggested in my chat, maybe just connected to sprint. You can't mantle unless you're sprinting, maybe, because they do need the mantle to be free-flowing, because the way the exploration's designed, they're really leaning into that with you chasing cats to stop runaway cats and chasing criminals, and you need to mantle over objects and use the traversal mechanisms that are in the game to chase them down, basically. Because the mantle has to be there, and it has to be somewhat sensitive, but I think it can be a bit of a problem if, after the 5th time of falling off a bit of a platforming area, it might be frustrating when you have to work all your way back round, or I don't know, maybe if the horse flies, then maybe it'll be a bit more of a different situation. You have to get on the horse and run over to a geyser and come back. It could be a bit of a frustration, but it's something that can be easily fixed. Like most of the things in this game, if I'm honest, where I'm like, I don't know if I like that. They're just things that can be fixed, right? And that moves on to the combat. I think it's the same sort of situation. I was worried about the combat being a rotation slot game. Now, it is a game where you swap between characters, but it's more of a switch game at the moment, it seems, rather than doing rotations. I haven't figured out if it does do rotations in that manner, because it works a little bit differently. And again, most of the negatives in the combat come down to jank, you know, just being a bit loose. It needs tightening up. It needs polishing. The parry's good. You know, it's more akin to something like Zenley Zone Zero, but it feels way less polished than Zenley Zone Zero. If I had to compare the combat, it probably feels closer to Zenley than something any of the other games, if that makes sense, but not at the same time. So, you have your characters, you have a basic attack, which is a melee attack, and then you have a right click, which is a skill. For some characters, that's a range weapon. For some characters like Lauren, it's actually like an uppercut. So he will uppercut with his right click, which is his skill, and his left click will be going through his attacks, which you've got combos to as well. So I don't know if this game's going to lean more into combos and stuff. So you can do heavy attacks, and while you got a heavy attack and you hit, you can switch around the character, and 2 characters are on at the team at the same time, and you tag team kind of thing, which is really cool to do. You can stun characters through parries, and just stun characters in general as well through breaking them, and then you can execute them with the F key, which is really cool to do as well, and can do a lot of damage to enemies, and it's just generally fun to do. But the way it works with the switching, you have an ambush skill, which is pretty much an intro. There's no outros from what I can see, or at least from where I am now. Maybe with gear and all that sort of stuff, I don't know. Maybe there will be. But you have an ambush intro skill, which basically all the characters on the team flash up to intro at the same time. So you can't intro, like basically swapping through. You choose one, and then everybody charges back up again to intro again. So you'll choose a character to switch to for a specific thing, depending on what you want, what you want from your team, right? But the way it works is you have a different kind of gear in this game, which is attached to the intros, and they're called reactors. It's an unusual system, and I quite like it. So it's a shared gear system. Everybody has 3 slots, and the first slot costs 1, the second slot costs 2, and the third slot costs 4. So it's better at the start to spread gear out amongst characters because it's going to cost you 4 to have 4 pieces of gear rather than 7 to have 3 pieces of gear. But you only start off with 3 power. So you can only have 3 1 slots on 3 characters or 1 1 slot and a 2 slot on 1 character. So it's better to spread it out amongst all your team at the start. You do get more of this as you level up as well. And these are things like, as you intro in with your ambush skill, you'll get like 6% damage for 16 seconds. Or there's one where you get healing for the entire team for 18% of the character's HP, which makes sense to put that on a character with high HP, which is a character that just happens to heal. So you do have sort of like traditional roles, what it seems like, of healer types, defense types, and attacking types. But it doesn't seem like, at least at the moment, you'll be rotating through for specific skills to buff particular units, at least what I can see now. I can't see anything where it's like outroing from this character or swapping from this particular character into this character to proc a specific thing. Doesn't seem to be there. At least the only thing I can see potentially is maybe Argos can generate stacks of vulnerability. So maybe there'll be characters that can take benefit of that, like stacking the vulnerability, switching into them, and they can benefit from the vulnerability. That might be where we see things like that. But the main synergy that it seems to be in the game, at least with characters, seems to be the resonance effect. So you have characters that are like fire, ice, lightning. One's like dark, I think. Then there's like a radiation, an air one. I don't know exactly all the names, but basically fire. You know, typical type of elements in these sort of games. So the way it works is you get a phase transition resonance effect if you have 3 different characters with different attributes. So out of the 4 characters, say you've got lightning, fire, freeze, and an air. You'll get the phase transition. So you'll get a final damage boost of 42.7%. But if you have multiple units from the same actual attribute element, you get a big buff. So you can go from 1, 2 to 3. So it seems like there'll be a bit of a meta of maybe running like a 2-2, like 2 freeze, 2 fire characters on the team to get a 2 buff of those elements from, you know, from those characters, or maybe running a 3-1 where you run 3 fire and maybe 1 ice or 1 lightning. I don't know how the attributes themselves interconnect with each other. It doesn't seem like that's a thing. It seems like it's through the resonance itself. So you can either go for the straight damage boost, which some units or enemies you fight might be needed, and then I think it's going to fall into where some units or enemies will probably be weak to fire and weak to freeze and weak to lightning and all that sort of stuff. So it makes sense to maybe potentially go with a mono element team, if you will, which I'm sure will have plenty of enemies where we'll need multiple units from multiple attributes to really deal damage to enemies. So it looks like that's where the meta, if you will, might potentially come in. But I don't exactly know how it will come into in terms of team synergy in regards to switching, which I'm actually kind of happy about, because it doesn't seem like it's just, okay, support sub DPS into your DPS, at least at the moment with the units I've got. Now, you've definitely got units that have higher attack and units that have higher defense and units that have more of a healing element because I've got higher HP. So there's enemies that do have mechanics. So I don't know, maybe you'd be wanting to switch to tank units to absorb some of that damage for survivability, and then switching back to your healer to heal everybody, and then get into your DPS to start doing a bit of DPS work, depending on your attributes and all that sort of stuff. But it definitely feels a bit more like a brawler game when it comes to the combat. And I must admit, I quite like it. I was shocked. I thought I was going to really not be a fan of the combat. Now, it's got work. It needs a lot of work. It's not polished. It can be a little bit jank. The camera can be a bit finicky sometimes, because I don't know if you can bring the camera out. I don't know if there is an FOV. I'm not 100% sure, but you're in quite close. Sometimes it can be a bit frustrating because of the camera, but other times it feels quite action-adventure game. It feels grounded. It feels brawlery. I like it. It feels close quarters, especially when you're using Lauren and you're just punching the shit out of enemies. It's like, damn, I don't know, man. It feels good, right? It feels good, but it definitely needs work. I think overall, the game needs a lot of polish, a lot of tightening up in terms of combat, in terms of just your basic movement of running around. the mount, a bunch of stuff. Obviously, there's audio missing in parts of the game. And I really do think one thing, though, the game shines in is the detective element of the game. They should run with that. Run all the way to the bank with it, because I think it's a really cool, unique thing about the game. And I think they've got something that could potentially be really cool. Go full LA Noire, you know, interrogate people. You can, but like do it in a really because you've got the way you can investigate people and you can look the model up and down. Introduce the interrogation into that. So I don't know, maybe you're looking for tells on people and stuff like that, and I don't know exactly how they're doing, but I think they could have some really cool mechanics around the detective work. It's a lot of fun. I like that about it. I love the MC. The world is awesome. Such a cool setting. They talk about things like the Navy, and I'm like, oh my days, I want to see like steampunk warjacks and steampunk battleships and stuff. I need to see that in the game. Like the actual environment, as I say, it looks gorgeous. This is a pretty game, and this game has potential. The bones are there. The base level is there. It's really there. And I think if they take time, we could have something kind of special, if I'm honest. Is the combat going to be mind-blowing ever? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to rewrite action combat, but I think it could be more than decent. It could be more than serviceable and actually good. Is it going to be the next biggest thing? I don't know. I think it's got a lot of potential though, and I really like where they're heading with this. This could be a really good story gacha with some cool story mechanics and just decent combat, right? It's all about how they implement all of the post-launch stuff. There's no gacha at the moment that I've been able to find, but it's safe to say this is a gacha game, right? We've got 4-star characters and stuff like that, rarities. We level up just like a gacha game. There's a lot of things in this game that is a gacha game, and I think it's pretty obvious this is going to be a gacha game, but at the moment it doesn't appear like we have any gacha. So yeah, I think the potential's here. It just needs a lot of work, and some tweaks to exploration, tweaks to combat, and I think we're on the right path then. Well, I think early 2027, late 2026, this game needs a good, in my opinion, 8 to 10 to 12 months to really cook to be something special. And we could have a really cool game on our hands here. I really do think we could. But yeah, guys, I'd love to know what you think down below. Oh, before I get off as well, there's a real estate system in the game where looks like you can purchase property and make money out of it and stuff like that. Really like that. That's actually kind of cool. And as I say, the reactor system, interesting. Shared gear, kind of cool. We've got light cones, weapons, so we've got a weapon system. We'll have to see how gear farming actually works and what other elements are attached to it and how much RNG is involved. We'll have to wait and see there. That'll be a big factor. The game needs a sweep function as well. Put a sweep function in the game. Every game should have a sweep function. I don't care. Stick a sweep function in there in regards to farming. And yeah, man, I think we've got a good little game on our hands here. We'll have to wait and see anyway. But yeah, I think the combat is probably the weakest part of the game. And I think that's the part that they really need to focus on tightening up. But please, please don't change the exploration for people who want double jumps and wall running and flight and doing crazy shit. I'm not against the jump being in the game, but the exploration feels really fun. Don't make the world less interesting to appease the people who want to run around like a crackhead. The exploration's really fun. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think down below. If you've enjoyed the video, subscribe, give it a like, and I'll see you all in the next one. Ta-da.